Third Army.
Right. All right. We're talking today with Mr. Charles Fisher of Coloma, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. This interview, in the version that you'll be seeing it on our website, will be in several pieces, one shot by his two daughters, one done by yours truly in a previous session. This session this morning will focus primarily on Mr. Fisher's experiences up to the end of the Second World War in May of '45. So, Mr. Fisher, can you start us out with some basic background? To begin with, where were you born?
In Irish Hills, Michigan, which is really Brooklyn, the central southern part of Michigan, the heart of the hills, a beautiful area.
Okay. And what year were you born?
1921.
Okay. Now, did you grow up in that area, or did you move around?
My dad died of a heart attack when I was 2, and when I was 4, moved to Wyandotte, Michigan, which is over on the Detroit River, south of Detroit, about 12 miles, which is between a rock and a hard spot, I call it. The railroad tracks, a city dump, and Detroit River and a swamp. But that has its, I mention that for a reason, because that's why I was such a good shot and why they later made me #1 scout, because I grew up shooting rats and snakes with a .22 rifle, a single shot rifle. Single shot, you shoot better because you know you don't have another shot ready.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, had your mother remarried, or were you living with family, or?
She remarried to a man named Holmes, but I kept retained my name as Fisher, because my real dad's name was Fisher.
Right.
And Holmes was a sort of a, well, he fed me and he kept me warm, in a way. And but he was kind to my mother, and my 4 brothers and sisters put up with him because he was really kind to my mother. But, because in Irish Hills we had also a big farm, and they wouldn't work the farm for him. So they got scattered all over. So I didn't grow up with a bunch of brothers. I just see them occasionally.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, did you stay in that same Wyandotte area through high school? Or?
I didn't go to high school, but I stayed there through the 8th grade.
Okay.
And at that time, I don't know about today, I went to a Catholic school called St. Patrick's, and at that time, St. Patrick's was 8th grade education was equivalent to a public school's 12th grade. And I heard many other people say that too.
Mm-hmm. But the state law only required you to be in school through 8th grade, so.
Yeah.
Now, after you finished school, what did you do?
I was 16, started working, managing gas stations. Managing at that point meant doing,
Mm-hmm.
and in those years, and greasing and repacking wheels and doing more than just pumping gas.
Right.
And then Firestone Metal Division, Firestone Rubber of Ohio opened up a metal division on the Detroit River, and I was able to get a job there. My first big lie, because I told him I was 19. But I cleared that up when I became 18. I told them that I wanted my Social Security to be valid, and that was a mistake because it took two more years before I got a raise. Excuses they used. But before I was 18, I had 2 trades under my belt: die setting and machine repair. Working with all old men who were there, who came up with the intent of breaking in younger men for the show. So my timing, I was very lucky. And then running punch presses, kids losing their fingers. And I said, I'm not going to do this the rest of my life. And with my limited outlook at that young age, that's why I became a dice hitter and a maintenance man. I'd punch out 3 in the afternoon and go back and be a pest and get in the way and help these men do their job with big wrenches. And I still have the calluses on my hand from getting the big wrenches, which I used to chin myself on.
Now, were you still working there when the war started?
Yes. Well, I recall that. No, I had quit there and had become a foreman of a production machine shop making tail assemblies of aluminum for the aviation industry, and learned again some more setup of the whole tool room. Mm-hmm. And even though I always wanted to be a tool maker, I learned more about it there, and never became a tool maker, but I ended up with 60 of them under me.
Were you working there when Pearl Harbor happened?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you hear about Pearl Harbor?
Oh, sitting with my wife, my brother-in-law, and my sister in a tavern, and we heard it over the news. We were in a tavern having a hamburger, and because they're the best. And back then there was a lot more patriotism. So, and I had a daughter, 2 years old. She's sitting over there, and so even married, I didn't have to go in. I volunteered, and because I was such a good shot, I was placed in number 1 Point Scout.
Okay, that's getting now a little bit ahead of the story here. Basically, when did you enlist? How long after Pearl Harbor did you sign up? And the discharge paper lists when you got out. But did you go in 19...
I enlisted, I was in 18 months plus training, probably 2 years. So I enlisted in, I don't know, what it was, 44.
Yeah. Well, no, that would have 44 was when he went over to Europe. So if there's 18 months plus 18 months from middle of 45, so probably 1943.
Yeah.
Maybe about a year or so into the war. Now, did your job give you a deferment?
It would have.
Yeah, if you had wanted it.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
I wanted to fight for my country.
Okay. So when you do go and you sign up, where did you go to enlist?
at a local nearby. I was living at that time in Trenton, Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and the nearest place was I can't. You girls remember? You were there, where Mom and Wayne are buried.
Flat Rock.
Flat Rock.
Okay. So there was a recruiter there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then where did you go, where did you report to first? Like for physicals or things like that?
Well, enlisted there, went home, and I don't know when they gave me a date. I had to go back to Flat Rock,
Mm-hmm.
get on a bus, and go to Great Lakes Naval Training Center, I think was the crew recruiting
Mm-hmm.
place. And from there, they put us on a train and sent us to Little Rock, Arkansas for training.
Okay. Now what camp were you at?
I think it was Camp Lucky Strike.
Well, Lucky Strike, that was one of the camps that they shipped people in and out of in France.
And then it was a Camp 20 Grand. I don't remember.
Okay. Basically, your basic training was in Arkansas?
Yes.
Okay. And what did the basic training consist of?
Well, being infantry, it was naturally a lot of firing, and having been in the factories, there's so much noise, and getting a break from that, and then still more noise with the guns. Due to that, I just recently received my hearing aids, because up until now they didn't have. It was irreparable,
Mm-hmm.
but then we having to climb over 10-foot walls with a pack on your back, have to crawl under barbed wire with machine guns firing over you, and with my memory due to Alzheimer's or old age, whatever.
Did you do a lot of marching and long hikes? And
Yes, that was always. Sometimes just jogging, and so and point I wanted, I can't think of it.
And did they put a lot of emphasis on discipline and on following orders?
Definitely, most definitely.
Okay.
And they taught anybody that was BS or bully, they better stand in line, and they did a good job at that.
Now, was it easy or hard for you to adjust to life in the Army?
It wasn't too hard, because I wanted it. I wanted to fight. It wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
Not being a conscientious person, or whatever they called them. I took it, expected it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Some parts I didn't like, but I still took it. I remember first coming in, and before I even got out of the train, I hollered at guys out there through the window, "Do they have motorcycles here?" I love motorcycles. I had left one at home, and since got about 6 more over the years. But then I first soon learned discipline started right first 3 days. First thing you're in there is they teach you who's the boss, the Army. Scrubbing pots and pans. The first thing everybody went through, blisters on my thumbs, both thumbs, from scrubbing, and them tells to come on, get on a ball, hurry up, and boy, that part I hated.
Mm-hmm.
But that was only an indoctrination. I didn't know at that time that it might be the way Army is all the time, but it wasn't. I was just teaching you discipline.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you older than some of the men you were training with?
Yes, about 3 years older.
Now, did you become a little bit of a leader, or did they look up to you a little bit?
Yes, my main buddy, who after 70 years, and this action you're bringing about, finally got him to come here, and which will make it a really, and he was a second scout. And so that's the two scouts who were together fighting and in a foxhole at night together, not sleeping, but in a foxhole, not supposed to sleep in it. And, but you had to, of course, sometimes. But he was here, I think, last week and covered more of these stories.
He's 5 years younger.
And he's in pretty good shape yet. But he was a #2 scout, and I tell everybody that I protected him from the Heinies, the Germans, and he protected me from the Americans, because I'm out ahead, and the second scout is depending on the terrain, whether you're close by or far away, whether you're desert or forest. They have to maintain contact with one and the other and the other, and so anybody that have to shoot me, they have to go through him in the back. And he was just complimenting, what was it he said?
Well, he mentioned that they always looked up to you. You took care of them, and especially him. And you were always the one who was in charge and ready to go and watch out for him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He also said that I saved his life many times. And I didn't look at it that way. I was just doing a job.
Right. All right. And to go back here to Arkansas and training there, after you get through the basic training part, did you get sort of more advanced training then, or what did you do next?
Well, they give you a 10-day vacation, and I went home and I've since looked up and found some pictures of me playing the part with my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
who was what I was really fighting for. And then from there I went to North Carolina at Camp Butler or something, and then they organized us where we belong to get you ready to go to Boston and overseas.
Okay, so this is where, so North Carolina, is that where they organized your division?
Yes.
Okay, and then again, which division was that? That was the 89th?
89th Division, 353rd Regiment, 3rd Army under General Patton.
Right. Okay. Now, do you remember, well, talk a little bit about what life was like there in North Carolina. You know, you're not in basic training anymore, so what were you doing during that time?
Well, it kept me busy. Except one day I passed out, and I just anemic, I guess. I don't know why, but I just fell on the ground when you're standing in dress rehearsal, you know, so to speak. And so they sent me to the hospital and discovered I had sinusitis to a great extent. Released me and went back into organization again, and that displaced me a little bit anyway. I got reorganized, and that's where I met Emerson and Fawn, and we jokingly called ourselves the Three Musketeers, and Fawn is the one that was here
Mhm.
visiting me last week. After, like I said, it took this act of Congress, which are starting up again, and took an act of Congress to get him here. Although I had been down to his place several times,
Mhm.
and
Do you have an idea of about how long you were in North Carolina?
I would imagine about 15, 20 days.
Okay, so not real long.
No,
Okay, but so then your division had organized maybe back in Arkansas?
no.
Okay,
In Arkansas, we were strictly basic training.
okay. And then after that, you're in North Carolina, and they put the division together, so you get assigned to your units. And then pretty quickly after that, they're shipping you out?
And they shipped us to Boston,
Mm-hmm.
and the first time I saw the Statue of Liberty, and went out from there.
That would be New York.
Yeah, but Boston.
Did you
from there
sail
we
from?
went by boat?
Okay.
By what is it, Staten Island? And
Okay. So you took it. So you took a boat from Boston down to New York to join a convoy from there.
Yes,
Okay.
as I recall now. I could be wrong. They didn't know much about geography then.
Mm-hmm.
Learned an awful lot and still don't know much.
All right. But now, what kind of boat were you on?
I was on the Hamden Sydney Victory, which was a victory ship,
Mm-hmm.
of which they had very many. I don't know how many. But years later, after the war, coming home, calling on a Bendix division, it was in sales then, and gone down to Norfolk, Virginia. And as we came in landing, I could see all those ships down below us. They were in what they called mothballs.
Mhm.
And I said to my wife, that's what I go across overseas on. Is that little thing? And I guess they had problems with those because a lot of them cracked right in half. They'd get up, I can still hear their rudder when they get over the top of a wave and they rock, and that rudder comes out, it goes zzz, 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 and it shake itself right down.
Yeah. Now, was it a rough voyage when you crossed the Atlantic?
Not going over.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back I never thought we would make it.
Now, what time of year was it when you went over? Was that the fall of '44 or in the winter now?
It was in the winter.
Okay.
I don't, must have been January. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. It was blizzard. And we landed in France, Port Le Havre,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a blizzard there too. And they put us in, but on the way over, we hit the Gulf Stream and got a chance to rotate to get some fresh air every so often, a part of a section at a time, go on top of the deck. And on that trip on the way over, we were able to take our shirts off and get some sunburn.
Mm-hmm.
And also experienced on that trip, was able to observe our destroyer, which protected us going over. They observed them. They go so fast that their noses come right up in the air. And then they start rolling off big, like oil drums.
Yeah, depth charges, right?
Depth charges, and but then we were ordered down below, back in our bunks. When you were back in your bunk, you had your nose up your other guy's butt. There was no room. You were like sardines,
Mhm.
literally. And but at least they let us out once in a while to get some air. Once a day, as a rule.
What was the food like on the ship?
Horrible, because it was all. They didn't have purified water then. They used salt water for everything, even the food, and I hated it. But they told us to eat if you don't want to get sick, eat. Put something in your belly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that. And I didn't need that so much going over, but on the way back it paid off.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was vomiting all over the ship. And
Okay, so we've got you landed in France, and it's snowing and weather's bad. Now, did they put you in a camp there, or did you get on trucks or trains and go away?
oh, we got on into a camp for, I called it indoctrination. They said our food went to England, so they gave us a piece of toast with a little bit of ground and some gravy, and we called that shit on a shingle. And but then, and they sent you out, made you dig foxholes while in a swamp full of water like that. And that wasn't bad enough, made you get in it. So, what they were really doing, although I didn't realize it at the time, was getting you ready for the front line, getting you mad, and I was. I fell for it. Then
What about the bodies coming out? You said when you got
Oh,
into
yeah.
the car,
then as we left the Havre to go inland again in a blizzard and standing up like cordwood, standing up like trees, shoulder to shoulder. And as we got down to then, while we're going up into Germany, or where our preliminary place, then there were jeeps that had hauled ammunition and stuff to the front, coming back with bodies laid in it, neat like cordwood.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is the way we go up, man. This is the way we come back.
All right. Now, when they had to take you across kind of northern France to go up and get up to the front, did they put you in trains or did you go in trucks?
Truck. To Luxembourg, to I think that's where we started actual combat.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to make the beachheads.
Right. You're coming in sort of after the Battle of the Bulge,
You're right.
right? Or at the very end of it?
Before the Battle, but after the landings of Normandy and
Right.
so forth.
Well, if you were coming in the winter with the blizzards and so forth, the Bulge is going on in December and early January, but then Patton is counterattacking after that. So you're probably joining them as part of that push.
I would guess that.
Okay. But that
Because
would,
by the time we got to the Battle of the Bulge area, we were just helping them clean up.
right.
The big fight was mostly over.
Okay. Now, at this point, did you have your assignment as first scout in your
Yes.
unit?
From the day one
Mm-hmm.
after leaving North Carolina, I was always first scout.
Okay.
And
Now-
always in that position.
Okay.
With exception to the fact that I was trained in what I called infantry plus, like you'd sell the Green Berets or something. I was trained in intelligence and reconnaissance. And sometimes I was pulled out to go in and capture an enemy if you can find him, or check out a bridge to make sure the tanks could go over it the next morning, that it wasn't booby trapped and so forth. So, other than that, you get back in line again and go back to your normal combat.
All right. Now, as a first scout, if you're approaching the enemy or you're moving forward, what were you doing?
Carrying my rifle at port and just observing the enemy. I never saw another man's back, and I never saw my men. They were behind me.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I seldom saw the second scout. He had to see me, but I couldn't be looking back at him.
Right.
I was looking ahead, searching for the enemy, and doing what Patton said: go forward and kill soldiers.
Do you remember the first time you went into action? Or do they kind of run together a little bit?
Yeah, sort of overlap. It'd be sporadic. Might have a good battle one day, and the next morning the Germans would pull back and you'd be following them.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about the Germans, they never discarded their coat. When they ran through the trees or across the field, their coat was out straight. I guess that was because we carried a blanket on our belt, but they carried their coat. In that, they carried either coffee or bread, wine or water, and they carried everything else they had, including probably some grenades.
And they carried those under their coats?
Under their coats or in their pockets.
Okay. Now, could you sense when the Germans were near? Did you have ways of knowing where they were?
No, just by visual.
Okay.
And I had beautiful eyesight then. I'm blind now, but it was beautiful then.
Okay. So some men have said they could smell the Germans, or the Germans had a distinctive odor to them or something. But you didn't notice that?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, you mentioned that sometimes you were given these intelligence and reconnaissance jobs. Did you ever actually go and capture a German and bring him back?
Just once, and he surrendered, so it wasn't hard.
Mm-hmm.
More often I was really, like say, checking out a bridge,
Mm-hmm.
several of those. Just make sure it's not booby-trapped, and then it's strong enough that it hasn't been destroyed for, while the Germans retreated.
Mm-hmm.
So that our tanks could cross over, and trucks, the following morning.
Mm-hmm. How many times do you think you did that?
Oh, half a dozen.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, as you're moving kind of through Luxembourg, did you go then into Germany from there, or did you go back down into France and over?
Oh, I went through France,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we started in Luxembourg,
Right.
and then Belgium,
Mm-hmm.
and went through parts of Hungary, and then into Germany.
All right. Now, as you were kind of moving sort of through Luxembourg and into Germany, what did the countryside look like as you were traveling?
Well, a lot of bombed out buildings, ruins, and I couldn't carry a camera then. I had enough to do, and but later on I took a lot of pictures, which
Mhm.
I have, and in all the countries, even France, Rouen, Le Havre,
Mhm.
places, churches even bombed.
Right. Okay. Now, were you mostly going through built-up areas, or was there a lot of forest or farmland, or all of those things?
Well, my luck, and I call it good luck, was mostly on farmland.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like cities, and for many reasons. But on farmlands, and their farms and forests, which they call them over there, were clean as this yard. They didn't have trash wood laying around
Mhm.
like we do in our country. And sometimes you'd be following cow paths along the side of a hill. Sometimes it's a road like right out front here. I was never on the Autobahn or anything, but it was roads, usually back roads, dirt roads, or just wagon paths, or cow paths, lots of cow paths.
It was, you know,
And it's when you look very closely, because being the first man, look for mines. And when you found a mine, you take out your handkerchief and stick it there on a stick so nobody step on it. But even though they taught us how to defuse a mine, I didn't have to. I just marked it because my job was to fight, and
Right.
Other people came later to disengage those mines.
Did your company get into some heavy fighting?
Briefly, I don't remember any specific title or name, like the Battle of the Bulge or anything, but it gets pretty heavy sometimes. And you might be okay for 3 days and you got them on a run.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the country. In the city, I don't know. I think it's probably heavier in the city.
Mm-hmm. But were you mostly fighting in sort of an open country or smaller towns?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As you were fighting, did you encounter German tanks or heavy equipment, or were you fighting mostly infantry?
Mostly infantry. But I was trained with bazookas, which is a pipe you put on your shoulder. Pick a couple of wires together and with a battery and rocket goes off. It's really a rocket launcher.
Right.
And that was good for tanks if you could get behind the tank. And did that a couple of times.
Okay. And did you have any trouble with enemy artillery or enemy aircraft?
No, one time when I was fortunate in being in a house when I was in the city, I heard, didn't see, must have been damn near hitting the chimney. It was so close. A jet go over. That could have been our jet, I don't know.
We didn't have them yet.
That's right. So, you're right.
So you heard one, but it wasn't looking for you.
Yeah, right. Or I wouldn't have been here.
Now, how would you characterize the German soldiers that you were fighting against? I mean, were they good, effective, or?
For the most part, they were certainly well trained and they were intelligent. Near the end, they, I guess they turned lots of boys and old men. And in that case, I think it's a good thing they did, or I wouldn't be here. Because I've seen cases where I shoot and another one bullet would pop by, not whiz by, pop by. That is a misleading factor that people that they heard about the bullets were whizzing. They saw too many cowboy pictures, making up stories. They weren't there. But when a bullet goes by your ear, maybe even that far away, this far away, it pops just like busting a balloon, a little toy balloon. Pop, it creates a vacuum.
So those were fired by guys who were not very good shots?
Yeah, if they would, they'd have killed me.
Now, did you encounter any SS troops?
Yes.
And what were they like?
Well, they were more disciplined than the others, and I didn't get to talk to any of them personally, but they were straight and erect, and they were more of the true soldier than I guess Hitler was asking even kids to stick up, die for him.
Did you see these men mostly when they were prisoners?
No. In the closest I got to him, I guess, was a concentration camp where I was the first American soldier to enter, and go right on through it. And while going through it, a man, probably a Jew, came out with like a dirty dishpan full of water, excuse me, and dumped it in the ground. And he dropped the pan, went like this, kneeled down in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do anything, couldn't say anything. My job was to go ahead because the Germans were just ahead of us going out.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't even cover a couple pits. The bodies were had just been dumped there.
Mm-hmm.
They all had some lye on them.
Now, did you expect to see that? At that time, did you know the Germans were doing that?
Just angry.
Mm-hmm.
And then Eisenhower came through the next day and called out the whole town, man, woman, and child, had them come and look at that and see what Hitler was doing for them.
Yep.
At that point, some screamed, some passed out. But I guess that big long building that's where the gas chambers were, and railroad tracks. Bring them in by the boxcars. They tell them that take all your clothes off, we're going to fumigate you.
Mm-hmm.
They fumigated them all right with gas. They took all their rings, their gold teeth. They must have had bushels of rings and gold teeth. I don't know what happened to those.
Now, how much of this did you know about before you got to that camp? Had they told you anything?
No,
Okay.
I didn't even know I was coming to it.
Okay.
It just, all of a sudden there it was, you know. And it was quite an experience.
Mm-hmm.
But then I knew what I was fighting for.
Right. Now, as you were moving through Germany and beyond, were you seeing much of the civilian population? Or were they staying out of your way?
Once in a while, they'd all be in their houses, locked doors. And one day, when I did have to go through the town, we're supposed to check out all the houses. You didn't have time for that anyway. I just shot a lock off. Big front door, just like this one. And all of a sudden I heard a bunch of kids crying, screaming. That's when I thought of her. That's when I really knew I was fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
And another time, we're just coming in, just getting dark and coming down a hill. A lot of towns were, instead of on a hill, in a valley. And as it coming down on a half a trot down a steep hill, there was a guy, an older man, standing there wiping his forehead with his white handkerchief. He was signaling them that we were here, and he was probably an old soldier, but everybody was. But then I should have bayoneted him, but I didn't. It would have been good practice. But I'm not sorry though.
Now, did that start a firefight? Did the Germans in the town start shooting at you? Or did they just go out the other side?
Oh, they went out the other side, and there was only, I didn't see many. The main army had gone, I guess, but there was one. The other side was a hill, long hill, and soldier with his coat on again and pumping a bicycle going up the hill. Just not too fast, but fast enough to make his tail go out. And that had to be 500 yards. And that beautiful M1 I had was on the one on the wall. Would really reach out. We never took time. We just knew good expert riflemen knew how to use windage and elevation by simply guessing their guidance. And so I aimed for his shoulders and that long a distance. I hit him in the legs, and he dropped the bike and he started crawling. And then one of our machine guns on the other side of the, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 houses away, opened up on him, and I shot again. So he was killed.
Now, did the Germans defend that hilltop, or did they
No,
go back from there?
no, it was just the back valley of the village. They were going. We didn't see them, but they had gone. We just see occasional one running here or one there,
Mm-hmm.
and
Did you ever get injured in combat?
no,
Okay, they never hit you.
I ought to apply for Purple Heart. The only injuries I had was skinned up knees
Mm-hmm.
from falling. I went through 2 rifles, breaking the stock,
Mm-hmm.
break my fall, and
Now, are there particular events or missions or whatever that you remember sort of distinctly, particular things happening, say at a bridge crossing or another contact with the enemy that kind of stand out in your memory?
crossing the Moselle, which I crossed 3 times, because it went like this, and we had a direction, we went by compass, and I wasn't to vary from that, no matter what I could hit the water, or the dirt, or the swamp, you kept that line. And we got up to the edge of the Moselle River, I don't remember what town, but it was a great grape country, and the sides of the hills were all grapes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so steep, it was like terraced up, and you hang on to the grapevines and pines and lines that were strung for them to grow on in order to climb up that hill. And after getting up there, I could see, I wondered why they didn't kill us. I looked down on there what an easy target we were.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that crossing was in a raft.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't shoot from a raft or you'd tip yourself over.
What happened to Emerson?
Okay, and we got over up on top of that town, and there was a little plateau and a little city. There were all a lot of little cities, no big. I wasn't in any big ones. For sure there were big ones, Berlin and so forth. But then at one time that they should have got me, the sergeant who they asked for volunteers to do the crossing, like you're a volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, the sergeant said, and I had given him a hard time one time in North Carolina while we were getting organized. We occasionally went up on the field and played with a bunch of rags for a football. And I had Fawn, who was across from him, and go take my place, and I took this guy, and I hit him on the shoulder, and lifted him up, and he was big, and I carried him, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, and nothing was ever said. That was one of the sergeants. He was doing his job, but I just didn't like him shouting at me.
Mm-hmm.
And this time crossing the Moselle, he organized and was leading this squad or two across. When he organizes to go over, like say you're a volunteer, and Fisher will be the scout, and he's also a good football player. I played football all my life, but couldn't even know how to keep score. So anyway, he got shot with a burp gun. Those burp guns were a fast, very super fast submachine gun.
Mm-hmm.
When they fired him, they had to hold him down because they climb on you. And he got laced straight across. And last I knew, he was alive in the hospital, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
He was a good man. And Suzanne just mentioned Emerson. One night, we're at a little, in the country, just a little group of houses, and when we could, we'd get in a house and shave and brush your teeth and so forth. Seldom ever, I never saw a shower over there. We'd wash up, PTA bath, we called it a whore bath, and my buddy Emerson, I was in a point foxhole, out in a point, always in a point, out in the exposed part, being a scout. In case the enemy counterattacked during the night, and usually two in a foxhole. But if when we did use a house to shave, whatever, one scout when my buddy would leave, he'd come back and I'd go back. Well, I heard some bang bang noises there, and I knew it was grenades that used to the sounds. But then Fawn came back and said, Emerson just got killed. His grenades went off in his pocket. I tried to find him. My daughter tried to. His parents, so I could talk to him because I went to the funeral when he shipped the body back later in Missouri. But anyway, no luck there. But we did get Fawn. Probably I was talking a little clearer there for a while. And then on that same hill, or place where we were, where I was at point and Emerson got killed, it also, the grenades in the house, they went off in his pocket and blew him apart. Just his tailbone is the only thing that held legs to the body. And I went back and I just opened his drawer and pulled out some sheets and just packed his body with sheets. Of course, do no good. And this is the same time a little guy named Disjardin, a little New York street kid. The Germans had a habit of, when you said halt or they were apprehended, they'd throw their hands up and at the same time knock their helmet off and put their hands on their head. That's a pretty good idea. You can't hold your hands up forever. And you can hear those steel helmets bouncing around, usually on cobblestones. Well, this same night, while I was out there on that point, this little guy, this Jordan, was out near a barn, and a couple of Germans were coming out had a loaf of bread in their hand. They'd been visiting their family probably, and we're going to go back to their line. And this sergeant says, instead of saying halt, like you're trained to do, you just stick them up. Yeah. When he says stick them up, is when the hand going up and fell down. But that was kind of funny.
But the Germans knew what it meant.
The Germans what?
They knew what it meant.
Oh yeah.
All right. Now, do you remember crossing the Rhine River as you went into Germany, or through Germany?
Yeah. Across the Rhine in what they call ducks.
Mm-hmm.
I never crossed on a bridge. These ducks were amphibious vehicle, square boat, and with when they landed, it's the same ones that they used in Normandy making
Mm-hmm.
the beach, and so I crossed there without incident.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Now, as you move across Germany, how far east did you get? How far did you go? You mentioned you got as far as Hungary? Or just Austria?
No, I went to Austria later.
Mhm.
I didn't fight in Austria.
Okay.
But it was Eisenach.
Okay, that's still in Germany.
You know, I think we went until we were ordered to stop
Mm-hmm.
to let the Russians. In other words, we were not very far from Berlin,
Right.
and we stopped and let the Russians go in
Mm-hmm.
by international agreement or something.
Now, did you ever see any of the Russians, or were they too far away?
Oh, not there, but later on in a train, taking prisoners back to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians were mostly big people, and their attitude was bullish. And they'd stand in the aisle of the train and wouldn't move. You had to go around them. I didn't like that, so I bumped into them. I think I still do that, don't I, John? The incident at Walmart here, I guess, or someplace, Myers. Okay.
Well, were these Russians, had they been prisoners of the Germans, or were they just regular Russian soldiers who were part of the occupation?
And they were regular Russian soldiers,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
All right. How did they react to being bumped?
They didn't do anything.
Okay.
Call their bluff, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
And contacted other Russians later when I was in Enns. I'll get to that.
All right. Now, where were you at the time the Germans surrendered?
In
Eisenach, or?
Eisenach,
All right.
I think it's right.
Okay. Now, after the Germans officially surrendered, were there still any Germans in your area who were still fighting? Did some of them try to
No.
keep going?
Well, yeah, there was a little, like I say, towns, villages, you know, just like what we call four corners. You know?
Mm-hmm.
There was a hedgerow down at the bottom of a. Well, anyway, they said there's some resistance up there. We gotta go get them. Hell, could have starved them out. So we took one machine gun and a couple BARs, rounding automatic rifles, and there were a couple squads of soldiers, including me, again a scout, and going in, go down these hills through trees, which I mentioned before, are clear. And they're down in there, there's hedgerows. And in those hedgerows, there were embedded Germans. And there again, I kind of think, because it was late, there must have been kids and old men. Because if I would have been them, I'd have been dead. If I could see them just so exposed. Because we were going in and going like along the edge of the trees. And there's an open area, and then that down there was that hedgerow.
Mm-hmm.
The Germans, you couldn't see them because they were hidden in the bushes. They opened up on us and killed a machine gun operator. And we all fired back, and they taught us always seek a low spot. Good training, and even wagon wheel tracks or truck tracks,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in the grass that leaves a path. You could lay in there. You'd be just enough to where they couldn't hit you with a bullet with a rifle. So I ducked under a evergreen tree like we have, and somebody opened up on me, and I could feel the pine cones and pine needles, or just branches, I don't know, hit me hit off my helmet.
All right. Now this tape is done right here. Now, we were talking about what happened with your unit right when the war ended. You said the Germans surrendered, but they were still sending out night patrols, and that you lost somebody that way.
Yes, in a little town, there was a group that wouldn't surrender, and there were holdouts, in other words. But we sent, I don't know, squad or something in there, and well, I don't know how many was behind me, because I was the point, and we had one machine gun, and you're not supposed to break up, as I understand it. A machine gun, usually there's two, and it broke up and just sent one, because it was a little group, a little town, and they were down. They were in the bushes in an unlikely spot. Usually they're on a hill. They were down by a creek, and the creek was all covered with bushes, and that was perfect cover. And the woods were all skinny fir like that, not that thick. And like I say, I mentioned plain woods, and so we walked in, and they opened up on us, and I hit the ground right in front of a little tree, like the smallest one out there, only so big around. And what saved my life was what you were trained to do. There was some wagon tracks, because it was dirt and grass, and that little shallow part of the wagon track kept me down, my head down, and a machine gun from them and rifle fire opened up on me, and the bark from the fir trees splintered off and I feel it hitting my helmet. And you see the helmet in there. And that's not the one, it's just a facsimile. And this second scout, said he was always following the cameraman. I don't know who he was following then, but when you withdraw, we don't call it retreat. When you withdraw, you supposed to tell the next one. Well, he's too chicken. He just got his ass out of there and didn't tell me, hey Chuck, come on, or Fisher, come on, we're leaving. And I turned around and I found I was all alone. And so, well, can't stand here till they keep picking until they get me. So I filled my clip and shot boom, 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 all along that little creek of bushes. Couldn't see the creek, just the bushes. Couldn't see the soldiers. Shot just to pin them down a minute, and I got up and ran like hell and fired backwards as I ran to keep them down till I got into the woods and out of sight. So that was, our war was over, but theirs wasn't.
Now, was that the last actual combat you were in?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I guess now once the war ended, and now you start to change from being an invading army to an army of occupation. Where did you go, or what kinds of things did you do after the surrender?
Well, we went back to France, thinking we're going to go home. But we were still at war with Japan. And so, in thinking that we're going home, we went back there, and I didn't want to just pull a fire guard or anything, so I hated truck drivers, but I was able to drive to do something rather than walk like a sentinel all night. I was able to drive truck hauling gasoline from Le Havre to Camp 20 Grand, and you'd back up a ramp like that, and you dump your gas in that. And shouldn't admit this, but tell it like it is. One day in backing up, well, I never drove a truck before either, but I looked at the other guy who was an experienced truck driver, and he couldn't back up that ramp. But I noticed how he tried. He stood on the running board and pulled out the throttle and the steering wheel and looked like this, and back up that ramp. And it was just wide enough for one truck. And so you dump by gravity into this. So I backed right up it. And the sergeant in charge of he says, well, you did the hard part. You got the job. And one day, there's lack of discipline. And you see where discipline should have been there. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for God, because they had the gas tanks. They'd set them on the ground, and they'd fill them on dirt around them, and they'd build a roadway to them. And you'd back up, and you'd take the hose, and you'd stick it in that. Take the cover off, and stick it in that, and fill that tank with gas, and gravity would fill the jeeps and other vehicles of the camp. Well, one day, I didn't smoke cigarettes. I'd smoke a cigar when I could get one, and so I smoked cigars. I seldom get them, but I took all my cigarettes to get a few cigars. I'd trade them. Then they backed that truck up one day and opened that cover and looked down in it to see how full of gas it was, and I could see the reflection of my cigar.
Oops.
Gas fumes coming out of there. But fortunately, there was a damn good wind, and it blew away. Or I'd have blown the whole camp up.
All right. You mentioned that you didn't like truck drivers. Why didn't you like truck drivers?
I used to like them because they used to help you pass on the old roads like the old 112, and today they'll run you over.
But the truck drivers in the Army.
In the Army, I had two reasons not to like them. But the main reason is that they stole all our rations. They didn't fight in combat. All they did is steal rations and screw French girls. So, I actually wrote home and told them to quit sending them books of candy and goodies. And I could still hear, and I still hear that, trucks coming up at night, which is the only time they got near the front line, they were bringing up supplies, food, ammunition, K rations, C rations, and I could hear them climbing the hills in low gear. So when I hear trucks out here, which fortunately most of the time is quiet, it still brings back memories. I don't have any episodes of, what do you call it, when you got shock from being at war.
Mm-hmm.
I forget.
Yeah, they call it PTSD these days.
Yeah.
Or flashbacks or whatever.
Yeah. Well, today I guess they give you, even before they give you out of the Army, they give you treatment for that.
Well, sometimes.
And but when I got out, they just gave you your train fare home or bus fare. Goodbye.
Okay. Let's going to go back into your story here. So Germany surrenders. Japan has not surrendered yet. You go back to France, to the Havre area. You're driving a truck there for a while. And then is that what you were doing when they dropped the bombs and the Japanese gave up? Or?
No. From there, we thought we were going home, but we weren't. We still didn't have enough points, and we were still waiting to be called to Japan. And they sent us to Austria. And so I went to Enns, Austria. Austria was famous for horses, and beautiful horses. And we were stationed at this former, what did they call the Austrian soldiers, horse soldiers? Cavalry.
So cavalry barracks.
Yeah. And so we were stationed there, and there's some pictures of that here. Again, to find something to do, I was quite artistic at that time, and the captain wanted some cross rifles. This 3rd Army, 353rd Regiment, so forth. And so I built a sign, and of course I needed hammer and nails, and I knew how to drive only vehicles. I was allowed to do that. So I asked for a Jeep, and they gave me one. And the same concern had cavalry unit. They had little repair departments across the street, like a barber shop, a paint shop, and a horse repair. It's just little buildings. And I took over this paint department, and I got the bright idea while there, and she's still trying to get. I wanted to get pictures to show you, sitting in this caserny, the mess hall, the lunchroom. I counted the windows, there were a dozen, and the other wall was basically clear. And I got the bright idea of painting in block form, about this big, each state of the United States. Back then there was 48, and so I had 24 on each side of each state, and it was a great morale builder. Guys would come in, hey Fisher, or Fish, when are you gonna put up Missouri, or when are you gonna put up California, and Michigan, and so forth. And then I painted a state flower. Like Michigan was apple blossom, so I painted an apple with a blossom on it, and that block state, and then Michigan in block letters was just M-I-S-C-H, and each one about that big. And on the front of the building, I had a angel, or what was I had? An angel in a gown, not wings. Who was the Lady of Lords, or Lady? Like Mary Magdalene. Anyway, Mother of Christ was on one front, full size, and on the other end, the American flag. And I had God Bless America, and on the other side, Land of the Free. And I did not get a picture of that. I didn't want to miss my boat home. And you think I'd have borrowed a camera or something, but
Right.
we were told like right now to pack. And weren't given any notice ahead of time.
Now, one of the things that I wanted to kind of get back to here, talk a little bit about what you saw of the German soldiers, or as prisoners, or anything that happened involving them.
I got so popular with that paint shop that they gave. I said I need some help. Give me some. I said you gotta have some artists in the army as prisoners. So I got some real artists as helpers, and so I just didn't have to do that anymore. I just got in uniform, what they called, which meant I put a helmet on and a pistol, and I was the guard to these prisoners while I was their boss as painters. And I don't think I had any other association with the soldiers.
Now, the German soldiers that you saw, how would you describe them? Were they the same age as you guys, or older, or younger? Or?
Yeah. At the end of the war, they had old men and kids. But I swear, if I was in their shoes, I'd be dead. But I think they either couldn't shoot or wouldn't shoot. I don't know which. But the real cadre of German soldiers were the SS, and they were very intelligent and very well trained, and all blonde and blue-eyed.
Now, did you deal with them directly, or just hear about them?
No, I didn't. I don't recall dealing with them. What do you got, Don?
No, it's all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I don't recall dealing with any of the soldiers.
Now, do you know how long it was that you stayed in Austria, or when you got to leave? Because I guess you're discharged in early April of '46, so you left before that. So were you in Austria for Christmas?
Yes. And I guess it was shortly after Christmas I came home,
Mhm.
because I came home. It was blizzards too. It was blizzards when I landed and went there.
And were there other events or things that happened while you were staying there in Austria that kind of stand out in your memory, either with the soldiers or the people there?
The Russians
Okay.
were across the Danube River, which was just a muddy river, and they'd get drunk and shoot across the river at us. And I can remember, I didn't know much about horses, but I remember seeing the old movies of, and remember, knew how to get on one. I didn't know how to start it, what gear, what shift to put it in. But I was going down along the river. All I had was a pistol, 45 automatic, underarms, and the Russians were on one end of the little bridge, and the Americans on the other. And the Russians used to get drunk and shoot at the Americans. And so I'm doing a patrol on horseback along that river, and the Russians opened up on me. And so I just remember going like this, dodging, and putting my head down on one side of the horse, and going ahead to the end of a point like this where there's trees,
Mm-hmm.
and standing in the trees and going boom, 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 boom. I emptied my gun at him. I don't know whether he hit it or not.
Now, while you were staying there in Austria, I mean, did the Army do anything to entertain you? Did the USO or the Red Cross come through, or did you have movies?
Yeah. We lived in this caserne. It had a typical, just like an American bar, and a little dance hall. And it was there I learned how to dance. And she and I could dance, and they clear the floor for us. But I couldn't do that then. But I learned in France, in the street, cobblestone streets, and I learned in Austria how to dance and waltz. Waltzing is what I liked.
Did you have to dance with other soldiers, or did they find girls somewhere?
No, they let girls in.
Okay.
And the girl, I got to meet one, a little tiny thing. She had papers saying she was 18, but I don't think she was. But anyway, I'd meet her every time I could, Saturday night, and we'd dance, and I'd walk her home, and meet her mother and her little brother, and talk to them a while, and go back to my bunk.
Did you learn any German while you were there?
Oh, I learned a little bit of everything. That's where I learned that the Germans always put the cart before the horse. Like instead of "Where are you going?" "Wo gehen Sie?" So, in the French, in the Spanish, I just learned a few words. And like when I had to go back into getting back to the Army again, I had to go one night and and check out along a creek, a little bridge, to make sure it was not booby trapped, so that our tanks could cross it the next morning. And that's if there'd been any Germans there, it'd be dead. So, but and you weren't allowed a flashlight or matches, but I was given a flashlight that be protected to look to see for electronic or some wiring, see if it was booby trapped or not. and it wasn't. And I came back, and that's the first time I really found out how our officers lived there. I went back to the colonel or the commander of our unit who sent me out on this, and I reported back to him, and he said, go back in there and go to sleep on a big feather bed. He said, and they left me a warm meal, not a hot meal, and some more K rations. And when I woke up, they let me sleep. When I woke up, everybody's gone. They were fighting a war.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had any brains, I'd have taken 4 days to get back to them. But I walked into I was hungry, trying to catch up with our troops. And went to their houses weren't like ours. They were all walls and little windows, and they all looked like farms. I banged on the door, and I said, and a girl came to a maid came to the door and said, just like that, just a minute, and she didn't speak English. She brought back a girl, a young lady, spoke better English than me, and she was the manager of that place, I guess. And I said, we'd like something to eat. I had asked the other girl for some broth
Mm-hmm.
and wine, and just bread and wine. I figured they'd give us a loaf and let us walk
Mm-hmm.
away. But she took this girl who could speak English, very attractive too, took me in the hallway a little bit, opened the door, and showed me big long table. All those guys had to be ex-soldiers, SS and everything, all the right age, and but they were a big table full of food.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, as soon as they get through, we'll fix you a dinner. So just wait. So we stood outside the door and waited till they all went out. And then we went in, and my God, I had potatoes, beef, roast beef, bread, broth, and ate all I wanted to eat. And I think we had some side dishes. I don't remember, maybe salad. But they ate well. And the war wasn't over for them yet. Well, it was right at that spot,
Mm-hmm.
but 10 miles down the road it wasn't over yet.
So was this kind of in a rural area or a forest area?
Yeah, this was rural area,
Yeah.
strictly country,
Right.
and just looked like an old farmhouse.
Mhm.
It probably was. And I was a Catholic boy, so I said my sign of the cross and said my prayers before dinner, thanking God. And my buddy sit over here, and I'm sitting here, and I wouldn't sit with my back facing the door. I'd sit where I could see that door. But if I had to do it over again, I'd have made that girl join us. They could have thrown a grenade in there and killed us so easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they had enough.
All right. So we get into 46 and so forth, and finally you get enough points. Now, did your unit go home together, or did you guys go individually depending on your number of points? So did your whole unit leave at the same time, or did you go by yourself, or?
We were broken up some,
Mhm.
Some of us were newly replaced because they kept shuffling us, changing us. So some of the original, not too many.
Okay.
Oh, came back again on the Hampton Sydney Victory ship, which I later got passes to England,
Mhm.
and then coming home on that same ship again. Took 10 days crossing the ocean, and some of those ships actually broke in half. And I thought oh no, I'm all through this and I'm not going to make it home. Because as a ship went over a wave, it would rock on the top of that wave, and the prop would be out of the water, and it would go zzzz, and you would hear it and feel it.
So that was a bad trip going back?
Yes, I didn't think I'd make it.
All right. Now, once you do get back to the States, you come back, do you remember where you landed? Did you go to New York?
They drove us right past the Statue of Liberty.
Okay.
And we landed on, was that Staten Island? I don't know. We landed on an island because we went through the island and through the building and got on another ship.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it was then when we went past the Statue of Liberty. And I don't remember what town we got off on, but then they just put us on a train and didn't go to no motel or houses or
Mhm.
anything. Just got on the train and headed back to
Let's see. I think
Chicago and then to
Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, maybe?
yes.
Yeah, because that's what your discharge paper says. Yeah.
What was it, McCoy?
McCoy, yeah.
Yeah, rings the bell. Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and got clean clothes, got checked out. Just a very brief stand-up physical check. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
And got all dressed up to go home. Gave us a mustering out pay.
Mm-hmm.
Legs carry me all across Germany, but they don't carry me now.
All right.
To your health.
Thank you. All right. So you muster out. Now, did they encourage you to join the reserves at that point, or?
No.
Okay.
And I would not go back to Detroit, where I'd been a supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
Could have gotten out of, as a draftee,
Mm-hmm.
but or not gone at all.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go. But I wouldn't go back there and say hello, for fear I'd get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I came back to Jackson, Michigan. Lived there for 18 years.
What kind of work did you do?
I was, other than being a die setter and a machine repairman before going to the Army, when I came back, I started right out in supervision.
Mm-hmm.
And at 27, I was superintendent of 2 factories. And at 35, I was general manager of another factory. And then I figured I knew enough making somebody else a millionaire, and they cut my wages because I was finally making a decent wage,
Mm-hmm.
and they cut my wages and they sold the factory out from under me. I didn't know, they fired me once. That's their fault. Second time would be my fault.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, no more, I won't work for him anymore. He begged me to come back and offered me a good salary, like back then, $25,000
A year, probably, for that, or $2,500 a month, or $25,000 a year.
25,000 a year, I think. Might have been 2,500 a month. But I had made better money than that. I got paid by what I produced, and the more I produced, the more I made. And I said, well, we had a good sales department, so I had plenty of things to produce. And Wisconsin and Michigan, and we were making, I learned more about deep draw and things there, where you draw metal glasses like that. So I came back. I was doing everything there. Everything, I even fired the attorneys when we had union negotiations. I'd went through the whole rigmarole, and so I was also doing purchasing, and so I talked to a lot of salesmen, especially steel salesmen, and I said, I'm looking for a place to take over. I said, I built this place up, they sold it out under me, I want my own. And I came to Benton Harbor, found a place called Freeland Products, which was run by a guy named Fred Lindenmeyer, where they got the nickname Freeland. And so I said I'd take that over, and my price would be $1, because there were 3 stockholders, $1 for 1/3 of the stock. And I don't know what I'm going to make. I'm not going to take any more than I need, but I know I got to make it or it won't be any, because they were going broke, they were going bankrupt. And so I ran that. I brought it back up to made a good profit, and then in Motor City or Detroit in Michigan, the Depression hit. What, 57? I don't know. And I do then.
Is that when you started Fabristamp? In the recession of 57?
Yeah, and so I started, I had fun dreaming up the name Fabristamp, which fabricating and stamping. Fabricating being bending a piece of metal, stamping being die duplication production. And so I started that up, and no money, $700 to my name. Nothing else in the bank, but I had perfect credit, and I had knowledge, know-how, and
Guts.
so I started a factory right down the road, and because so I'd be close by, and built that up to one point about 30 people. Then we got being a job shop. So sorry I sold it, because I found many more ways of doing it now. I decided to just sell it and be a freelance sales rep, which I did. Which a sales rep is, I didn't represent one company, I represented 17 different companies. And I made sometimes over $30,000 a month. And I didn't like it, except that I could laugh my way to the bank. But I wish I'd have kept my, over and over. I still probably have that factory down the street, but I kept it. Joyce keeps trying to tell me, go back to sleep, forget it.
Mm-hmm. All right. But you had ultimately a pretty successful career, all things considered. Now, did you build this house here on Lake Michigan or buy it?
No. I bought a beautiful tri-level home on the shore of Lake Michigan in 1957 for $37,000. I sold it for $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, he wouldn't sell it for $2.5 million, and I wouldn't sell this for $2.5 million. A lot next door, they want $1.1 million. Unimproved,
Mm-hmm.
rough lot, 100 feet wide from here to the lake. That's it. But this is never going to be sold with my agreement, because I have it already written in the will, in the contract, that it'll go to these girls, and from them on down to the next children, next children, next children, and never be sold.
All right.
But sooner or later, one of them will sell it.
All right. Now, are there stories or other things that he's left out that you remember that we want to get on the record here?
Well, just that his wife died in '93, and he lived in that big house then for another year.
Mm-hmm.
And then he and Joyce they traded because he owned this cottage, and then
Mhm.
they renovated the cottage and added on
Okay.
so that they could live here.
Okay.
He originally bought this land right next to his house because
Mhm.
his house was ready to fall into Lake Michigan.
Ah.
It was 3 feet from one corner at one time. And we had the Lake Association and everybody was involved. And then he had the brilliant idea he bought a bulldozer for $10,000, bought this property just to save his land, made a road down to the beach. Everybody was upset because, tear away
Mhm.
the bank you want to save, but it worked.
I
Put
put
all
over
the
$100,000 in that.
riffraff in and everything, the seawall around it. We call it Fisher's Point because you
Mhm.
could see the lighthouse in South Haven and the one in St. Joe when it was all eroded around it, and it's still there.
All right. Now, to close out here, I want to go back and have you think a little bit. What effect do you think your time in the service had on you? Were you changed at all by that, or had you learned things that you would not have learned otherwise?
I'm sure I learned a lot that I would not have learned. It's a great experience, and like everyone probably says, I wouldn't want to do it over. I wouldn't want to trade it for anything. And I still have some, not real nightmares anymore, but I still have some, call them educational dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And the dreams go, but I don't lose sleep over it
Mm-hmm.
anymore. I dream of it a lot, but not so much in the negative. Sometimes just some of the good points. And there were some.
He said once that he probably had post-traumatic stress because he came back and he was a very jealous man, jealous of his wife, and sort of angry. It was
Mhm.
difficult for him to, deal with his bosses, and so it took him a long time to
Like my hearing aid.
get back.
We're talking about when you were angry when you came back.
Post-traumatic
And-
stress, which they didn't have a name for apparently back then, but you said that you were jealous and angry when you first got back, and because there was nobody to help you readjust
Yeah.
to life.
Yeah, they didn't. They just put you out, and there you are.
That's right.
But I took a job shortly until I got fired by mutual consent in a place in Trenton, Michigan. Just doing general maintenance and production, table work, and I was awful. I was telling them how to run the place. The guy that owned it, ran it. It was a beautiful little shop, only about 6 or 8 people in it. But he was a close friend of my brother-in-law, who's head of Quimica Pentwalt SA in Mexico, graduate of Cornell, very smart man, even thought I was a genius. But he couldn't get over how I acted there. But this guy kept telling him, "This guy's a bastard," and I was. But I had a chip on my shoulder. I was just waiting for somebody to knock it off, and could have handled it too.
So did you have that chip on your shoulder before you went into the Army, or was it the Army that gave it to you? That experience?
No, I just, it was a military backup that they didn't wash my mind of the shock that I'd been through, and it just kept, it was a build-up.
Did that military experience make you more determined to do well and to succeed?
Yes, I'm sure of that. I didn't have that much time to think about it because I was always so very busy.
Well, you had a family to support and
Yeah.
all that to
And
do.
I always worked 2 or 3 jobs, always. I never knew what it was like. In fact, I used to tell my wife, I sent her down to the unemployment agency once because I wouldn't go down there. I didn't want unemployment, and I'd be embarrassed. But that, you know, you got a family support, like you say, you got to work. So
How
I
about
worked.
when you were 40 and you learned to fly and you flew over, was it Norfolk, Virginia, and the ships?
So you learned how to fly?
Yeah, I've got. I went through three different airplanes, and became an instrument pilot. And you couldn't give me a commercial pilot because all you have to do is spend more money, get your plane reach, and I could take off and land when commercial airplanes were sitting right there on the runway. I remember once in Atlanta, coming back from Florida, it was solid fog. I had checked the weather at the Weather Bureau, and I knew the fog was only so high, but the way you couldn't see the runway and the planes were still props back then, and taxiing out, I said, I know my abilities, but do you have any local restrictions? He said, no, sir. With your ticket, meaning my license, and your knowledge and your plane, you can take off as long as you can see the runway. So I taxied by these planes with their props still warming up and took off one like this.
All right. Okay. I think we kind of covered probably pretty well here your military career, which is what the interview is primarily about. So I think at this point we'll close out. And I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you.
All right. Point just after the Germans had surrendered, when your unit encountered some Germans behind a hedgerow, they had opened up on you, they had hit the machine gunner, and you were talking about how you all got down to the ground. And what did you take cover behind or in?
Okay, so after being sprayed with machine gun bullets just missing over my head and fine needles and cones and branches, chips falling on my helmet, they turned around and I was all alone. The troops had gotten the order to pull back, withdraw. They didn't call it retreat, they called it withdraw. Well, I did the only thing I could do. I said my M1 clip, which the shells are in, what that they would have I put a tracer bullet in the first one and tracer bullet on the last one. And no matter which way you put it in, it went.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to tell us to, when you see the enemy go like this, I hell with that. I see the enemy, I fire a tracer bullet and hit the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something else I missed on. Where was I in?
Well, you mentioned you were all by yourself.
Oh yeah, and I turned around, and they're supposed to pass the word on. You know, maybe with the bullets and everything, I didn't hear them, but in fact, I collared Juan on that when he was here last week,
Mm-hmm.
because he was supposed to make sure that I got the message, because you don't leave anybody behind. Well, all I could do is what had been taught to do. Load my gun with a fresh clip. Well, first shoot at the clip, get their heads down wherever they are,
Mm-hmm.
just spraying the bushes, and then, remember they were way below me, and this was terrain like this,
Mm-hmm.
about 30 degrees, and then I put in a fresh clip. Then on a fast walk or almost a jog, I'd run backwards and I'd still keep firing till I emptied that clip. And by that time, I hit enough bushes
Mm-hmm.
to where I was out of their sight. So I luckily got out of that one. They should have got me then.
Mm-hmm.
Must have been old men and kids.
Right. And was that the last time anybody shot at you?
No. After Germany, we still had Japan, and I didn't know I was going to Japan or home, or to Russia,
Mm-hmm.
for that matter. And they sent us to France for a while, and I drove a fuel oil truck, and just so I don't have to pull a fire guard or something. And that has some story. And I'll get her one I know, and maybe put me back on the right track.
All right. You're talking about,
Shot at again.
did you get shot at again by someone?
Oh, yeah, while it ends, Austria, the Danube River. They call it the Blue Danube. It was just muddy water.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how wide it was at that point. There was a bridge. The Russians on one side, Americans on the other side. Check whoever could, see who they let cross. And I had also painted signs for the Austria. We were the Austrian cavalry
Mm-hmm.
caserny, and they had beautiful horses. Austrians had beautiful horses anyway, but this was for cavalry, which was the same as our tank corps. And so I'm riding this horse on border patrol, and on minimum GI, which meant I had a GI helmet and a 45 pistol. And I'm going along there, and all of a sudden, bullets are popping by me, again, and the Russians were shooting across the river at me. And I wasn't much of a, I never grew up with horses, and so I remember the old cowboy pictures. I got down the middle of the side of the horse and fired back and went up to the nearest point, trees, broke away some branches and just went firing at them. And then that was the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time I was at fired by the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Probably were. They always were.
All right. Now, how long did you stay in Austria before you got to go home, or you? I guess you went to France after Austria. Was that it?
I think maybe a month or two.
Okay.
Month and a half.
All right. And you drove a fuel truck for a little while.
Yeah, in France.
Mm-hmm.
The fuel trucks were old, like our fuel oil tanks for the house,
Mm-hmm.
oval, like that. Well, they strapped them on the top of a flatbed,
Mhm.
flat, and they had no baffle in them. So they would, you hear that wash. You feel it, struck if you rocked it. But I was young and cocky, and I went into a big ditch. And I thought, but so I, instead of hitting the brakes, I hit the gas and drove it on right out. I had to wait just a second till that wash came back, and I went right out with it. That was a pretty good maneuver.
Right. Now, was there a difference in terms of how people in different countries treated you? I mean, were the Austrians nicer than the Germans or than the French, or?
The Austrians were all nice. The French were all nice. And the Germans, what little contact I had, were okay.
Mm-hmm.
I made a couple of bashes.
All
How
right.
about what you did with the prisoners in Austria, painting?
Yeah. I was running a paint shop, and I painted like the Army Cross Rifle sign and other captains of other outfits. When they drive in, they see that great big sign,
Mm-hmm.
Cross Rifle. They wanted one, so I had to paint some more of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was getting busy and I asked for help. And so instead of me just having the paint shop, they gave me a Jeep and two Austrian artists. And Andy, with the woodwork. I always did the woodwork and still do. But
So were you just
About
painting
painting.
signs or other things?
The flags, the
States?
In the Caserny, sitting there daydreaming one time, always dreaming to do something. And I counted 12 spaces between the windows and the flat space here. So I decided to make, in having the paint shop, we had 48 states in. So I decided to make the 48 states like in block. We called it block. Like if you cut Michigan
Mm-hmm.
out of a piece of ice or a piece of thick wood,
Mm-hmm.
you cut it there, and then turn it at an angle,
Mm-hmm.
draw it sideways, and you'd see that edge. And on the state, you put the state flower,
Mm-hmm.
and usually meant the tree or bush that went with it. And I became a hero there. Everybody coming to lunch, and I'm in there painting. Say, hey Fisher, when are we gonna have Arizona? And I'm
Mhm.
gonna, hey, when are we gonna have Washington? It was a real good morale builder,
Mm-hmm.
and the captain made me sergeant at that point. Well, tried to. He told the clerk to make me sergeant, and the clerk, on his own volition, didn't. He made me corporal.
Mm-hmm.
I collared him, asked him why, and he said, "Well, I never got 2 stripes at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Don't see why you should." Of course, I debated with him a little, but he could blow your records if he wanted to. So I didn't go too far, but I should have kicked the shit out of him. I wouldn't have been sorry for that. But because all he did in combat is carry a typewriter and the company records.
So after all that you did, you were just a PFC at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I ran that paint shop, and we tried recently to get pictures of it. But when it came time to get home,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't wait for my sergeant stripes, whether he had applied for them or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get home. I just, and
So what about that prisoner you brought in from the farmhouse?
well, back in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
the brought a prisoner. I see him going into his house,
Mm-hmm.
and pulled him out, turned him over to the regular sergeant, and the sergeant turned him over to this other Yahoo sergeant, who I not kicked the hell out of for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And he was no good because he couldn't couldn't hold a job in my opinion, in real life. But prisoner was turned over to him, and he didn't just walked around the trees or over the hill or something, and boom, he shot him in the back and killed the soldier. Well, we had some pretty sleepless nights, because the Germans know that.
Mm-hmm.
Always somebody sees something. And did have a bad night. And that same night, this guy discharged I talked about, captured those soldiers that were trying to walk back to their lines. And he was a little guy. He was a New York street guy. And he was in a foxhole with me. And his teeth, like to drive me nuts, he chattered, so scared that his teeth rattled. And I told my sergeant I don't want him with me again. Either give me Fawn back or leave me alone. And I didn't get him anymore. But he picked up a motorcycle, was laying on the road. He got on it and drove it up over the hill. We were near the end of the war then. Well, we weren't stopped, we were still moving. And he goes over the hill, out of sight, comes back, walking his bike with a whole damn army wanting to surrender. They'd stack their guns in the field, come back with all of them with their hands up,
Mm-hmm.
walking in cadence, and that made him a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And he was scared his bones were rattling before that.
Right. Was he any different after that? Or was it late enough there wasn't anything to be afraid of?
Wasn't too much other than the Battle of the Bulge. And there we had to walk about 30 or 40 miles. That's where the training came in during the night.
Mm-hmm.
Cross a little stream, after you cross the stream, you take your shoes and socks off, wring your socks out, put them back on, and your shoes back on, and keep on walking until we got, because we were going sideways then, and I was still pointing. And till we got in contact with the Battle of the Bulge area, and at that point in time, it was mostly cleanup.
Mm-hmm. That kind of gets us back around to things that we've already covered here at this point.
Okay.
All right. Now, when your friend Fawn was up here and talked to you, did he remind you of things that you hadn't thought about in a long time, or?
Lots.
And are there?
Which the girls captured. And I don't know, I hope you have the equipment or your helpers to transfer them. That's between you and Sue. She's got all the tapes. And I know I added some that didn't get in there yet, was this hat. There were 5 things that I can think of. Just the sight of this hat, because I'm mostly blind, can't walk. I was downtown getting out to go in to have lunch or something. And this guy, and I was struggling just to get out of the car, sliding off the seat and into a wheelchair, which Joyce was holding. But I had a hard time getting in there. And this guy came from 30, 40 feet away. He spotted this cap, and he came over and helped me, and then he left, and he said, I wanted to find a way to say thank you, and I finally did. He said, thank you for saving our lives and fighting for us.
Mm-hmm.
And he left, didn't know his name. But those little incidents like that happen quite often.
Mm-hmm.
A little girl I met in another store, and I was in a wheelchair, and she spotted this cat, and she said, you must have been in World War II? Yeah. So my dad was in World War II. And said, but I didn't get to say goodbye, because he didn't come home. And we both talked a few minutes, and he cried. And I don't very much, but that was very precious. I told her where we lived and told her to stop and visit us. Come back anytime she wanted to talk about her dad.
Were there stories that came up when Fawn was here that you remember, things that were we can add in here?
I remember going into one house and I came out playing accordion, little Spanish accordion. They're just like a harmonica, they're easy to play. And carried that a little while and threw it down. Then next time, I don't know, days, maybe a few days later, checking out another house, I come out playing a guitar. And then still another down the road, I came out with a harmonica, chromatic toner harmonica. And that I kept longer. I finally just sit because when I got a scary night, it's afraid you're going to get captured. You throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
Because they shoot you if they found any German on you. And we would them.
They talks somewhat about when they got time away, what do they call that, leave, or about some of the things they did. They went to England, and Vaughn fell in love in Scotland.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll let him tell that story. But I did go to England, and the Army showed us pictures of venereal disease, and some guy got actually sick, vomited, had to leave the room, and in a theater atmosphere, and so I would not take, I refused passes. I could have gone to Paris because everyone that came back from there walked back to the infirmary, whatever you call it, with their hands in their pockets holding their Peter because it was leaking. And I said, that's not for me. I'm not going to take that home to my daughter or my wife. And so that made me behave a lot better. I still wasn't perfect, but it didn't do much. Very slipped.
All right. I think that we've done now a pretty good job of filling in here the rest of your story, and we will work on putting the pieces together in the right order for the DVD version that we will send out to you and that we will put up on our website. So I can just, I think, close here by again thanking you for bringing me back into your home again and letting me
Thank you.
fix the problem. All right.